Sculpting the anatomy of the arms and legs can be a challenge, but a well-done job can greatly enhance the look of your model. My goal for today's video is to do just that by creating believable and visually pleasing anatomy and showcasing that process here on YouTube. Before we start, have you ever struggled with sculpting the anatomy of the arms and legs? Are there any specific muscle groups that you find particularly challenging to sculpt? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And with that, let's get started. In the first part of the video, I'll be showing the sculpting of the hands of my characters. I know how important it is to have good looking hands, and I think that everyone likes hands that look aesthetically pleasing. I mean, look at these hands. I promise, my name is not Yoshikage Kira, I'm not 33 years old, and I do not live in the northeast section of Morayo City, where all the villas are. To make sure I get the hands right, I've collected some references from Pinterest, and I also had my own hand, even though it isn't as attractive as other hands. I've organized all these references using PureRef, which is a handy tool for keeping everything in one place. I started by sculpting the foundation for the hand, the general shape of the fingers and palm. Although I've already taken care of the overall shape in my previous video, I still made refinements to ensure the shapes are accurate and attractive. I also want people to be able to tell the gender of my character just by looking at their hands. Next, I worked on the details of the fingers and the thumb. This is the most difficult part of the process in my opinion. I tried paying close attention to the anatomy, making sure that the bones, muscles, and fat pads are in the right places and that they look cohesive. Like I mentioned earlier, I want to make sure that the anatomy of the hands is not only accurate, but also attractive. I'm pretty sure there is a proper science that explains what makes some hands attractive, but I just went with my intuition and observation for these hands. I tried using face sets for the first time while sculpting the male hands, and to be honest, it was quite confusing to me. I couldn't really tell if it achieved what I was hoping for, but it was an interesting experience. I decided not to use it with the female hands because I just felt like it was not useful to me. I also double check my work with the references I have on hand. This step allows me to make sure that I haven't missed anything and that the hands look good from every angle. Next, I moved on to sculpting the arm itself. I started by joining the masses for the upper and lower arms, and then remeshed it so that it was one whole object and it was easier to sculpt. I then refined the overall shape a bit more before moving on to the more intricate anatomical details. I made use of the multi-res modifier for the male sculpt to add more resolution to the mesh non-destructively, and then started adding the anatomical details like the bony landmarks and forms of the muscles. Once the muscles and bones of the arm were mostly in place, I adjusted the shapes of the deltoids a little bit before joining it with the rest of the arm. For the male character, I had some trouble with the modifiers and the mesh resolution, and even ended up losing some details, and I found myself re-sculpting them multiple times. This was kind of frustrating to me, so I decided to apply all the modifiers and use a destructive workflow instead. This was not an issue with the female model because I just went with the destructive workflow right from the start and used the remesh modifier when required. Otherwise, the process for sculpting the female arms was quite similar to that of the male arms. My main focus while sculpting the female arms was to give them a more slender look with long arms. On the other hand, I wanted the male arms to be more muscular and well defined. I also decided to give the female arms slightly overextended elbows that went past 180 degrees laterally, creating a somewhat broken appearance. I think this added a touch of femininity to the overall look. This is not necessarily a feminine trait, I just like my female characters to have this trait. Finally, I worked on the torso a little bit and then joined the arms to it. I didn't join the hands to the rest of the sculpts, as hands require more geometry, so I kept them as separate objects. I refined the connections of the arms and shoulders to the rest of the torso, and even though I had some trouble with the anatomy of that general area of the body, I'm overall happy with how it turned out on both of these models. Before I move on to the legs, Here's a look at what the arms look like for both of these characters. It was challenging at some points, but overall, it was a pretty nice experience. I think the hands on my female character could have been nicer, but let me know what you think. Okay, finally, let's talk about the legs. As with the arms, I started by adjusting the shapes before joining all the masses that make up the leg, and then I tried to focus on sculpting the muscles, bones, and other anatomical details of the leg, paying attention to the areas where they connect and the areas I find challenging. I find sculpting the shapes of the legs to be super tricky, and that's why I had collected a bunch of references from Pinterest. Just like the rest of the body, I wanted the legs of my characters to be really attractive, and I tried my best to achieve the look I was going for. This also meant that I had to slightly deviate from reality in order for my characters to fit my idealistic vision. For example, I made the legs of my character really long. I don't think anyone has legs this long, other than maybe runway models, but even then, I don't think they have legs this long. I came up with this set of proportions by drawing and looking at other people's drawings and seeing what I find attractive. Up until this point, I've been harping about how important it is to me that my characters have super attractive features. But when it comes to feet, I completely drop that ball. Feet just don't do it for me. I really do not enjoy sculpting feet. I'm aware that some of you might be super enthusiastic about beautiful feet, and I really apologize for not having the same kind of enthusiasm. I'm really sorry for not giving them the love they deserve. I promise I'll work on it someday, but for now, let's just say that feet are not my forte. Finally, after I was done fighting the feet, I merged it all into one mesh while still keeping the head and the hands separate. I refined the connections of the legs and torso a little bit, worked on the glutes to make them look more appealing, and made sure my model looks good and everything works well together. I made slight adjustments here and there, and this is what the legs of my models look like. Maybe the anatomy of these could have been a lot better, but I think that will come with more experience and practice. I'm still pretty satisfied with what I have so far. And here's a look at the entirety of these models. I'm pretty much done with these characters. From here, if you want, you can add even more details like skin folds, wrinkles, veins, etc. to your model and take it to that next level. But I don't want to take these that far. I'm gonna join up the head and hands to the rest of the body and move on to retopologizing these in the next video. Anyway, this video has been slightly longer than usual, but I wanted to finish the limbs in a single video because I was getting kind of bored with it and I can't wait to move on to retopologizing. Let me know what you think of today's video, and if you're interested in the entire character creation process from the beginning, check out this playlist here and consider subscribing if you want to follow my journey into learning 3D. But other than that, I hope you all have a great day and I'll see you later.